Hi, welcome. Thank you for joining us for geography. It's so much more than you think and easy and fun to teach. I am Sarah Bailey from South Portland High School.
And I am Shauna Goodall from Orono High School in Orono, Maine.
We are going to take some time today to walk you through how to demonstrate geography in the classroom and why it's important to implement it.
So first, just a little bit about ourselves.
So my name again is Sarah Bailey. I have been at South Portland High School now for 12 years. I teach both world history and honors American history. In my spare time, I'm a mother. We're pretty much at the beach. We're traveling. I am constantly reading. I have the privilege of heading out to Austin, Texas next week as an NCSS presenter on how climate change is wreaking havoc on our ocean waters. And I'm also a Nat Geo certified teacher.
So I'm up at Orono High School, and this is my 16th year at OHS, and I teach AP Human Geography, World Civilizations and Geography, which is our world history and geography class for 9th graders, and AP Government and Politics. I'm a Mainer, an outdoor enthusiast, and an awesome aunt. And if you follow me on Twitter, you'll see my microblog. I blog one thing out a day about school, and so my way of communicating what we do in the classroom with the greater community. So on to geography. So today is GIS Day, which is just such a great day for us to do this webinar. Totally coincidental, not planned. But if you're ever interested in checking it out, it's always like the first Wednesday in November. Esri, which we'll talk about more, which is a big GIS, Geographic Information Systems software company, does a big to-do, and they'll send you stuff and help you do activities at your school. So happy GIS Day.
So we wanted to find creative ways that we could encourage individuals to utilize different systems in their classroom that would enable you to be able to teach about geography. And these are just a couple ways that I personally have utilized geography in the classroom. It's important to make it fun. If kids are constantly trying to memorize different places and so forth, that rote memorization gets boring for them. So different things that I've used in my classroom. We have mapped out boundaries. We've played geography bingo. We've used Google Expeditions and Nat Geo Map Maker. The mapping boundaries is kind of a great one. It's an opportunity to look at historical conflicts that have gone on in regards to, if you're looking at the Civil War, you could look at the Rwandan genocide, you could look at the Korean War, you could even go through and look at World War II. You could potentially look at water wars that are going on, the current crisis between Ethiopia, Sudan, and Egypt through the Gerd Dam would be an example. And what you would do is you would have the students first talk through what the conflict is. So you talk about both sides, make sure that you have a good amount of information that would basically set the stage for then going through and mapping out. The map would require you to have blank copies of the map, the boundaries, and then talk about, the shifting of the boundary itself. If students had to move a boundary, where would it potentially be? Does it make sense to keep it on the 30th parallel, or would you shift it someplace else? And so an example of this takes us to, it should take us to the National Geographic standards. And this particular standard itself will walk through different options that you would have for 4th, 8th, and 12th graders. It would enable you to talk about territorial divisions, the different types of political restraints that go on, and so forth. So the one that I typically use would be the 8th grade one, and then if I need to, for my 11th graders, we use the 12th grade one, and then just modify it as needed. So we talk about the different types of characteristics that go into establishing out political boundaries. We talk about, the disputed boundary, why it might be the case, and then how we would define those lines. And if we had to come to an understanding, or if we had to work through the conflict, how particularly would we actually do that in the case. Another example that we utilize out is geography bingo. There's a multitude of ways that you could do this. You could put bingo vocabulary on there that would pertain to geography itself. You could have students use a wide variety of articles where they'd have to search out different types of things that pertain to geography itself. So this is just another example of it. So if you said to the students, hey, find a graphic, find an article, a recent news submission, even a video clip that uses, for example, a map to communicate information, shows how culture shapes a group's way of life and their own view itself and other groups. There's a wide variety of opportunity that you would have within here. Oh, I apologize. Another example is Google Expeditions. This one's a fun one. I ended up actually getting a Donors Choose grant that enabled us to get some VR headsets in the classroom. And so we know that students have access to cell phones. They can even use it with the iPads if they have access to those as well. And they will download the app, and then students are guided through these wonderful expeditions. We've used it for different historical sites. You could use it for the ruins. You could use it to examine, the Himalayan mountains, and then talk about different aspects of geography. You could go into the human geography component itself. You could talk about geographical features, make comparisons to what it looks like to Maine. But it's a fun way to get kids thinking outside of the classroom, and they love pulling out those headsets and just being able to do something different. The last one that I use is Nat Geo Mapmaker. And National Geographic put together this great opportunity to make either table-sized maps or huge wall maps. And you can do it in a couple different forms. If you don't want to do the printed out version, this is an interactive map that you actually are able to do as well. And so you can put labels on them. You can change it so you have different interfaces. You can show the sea level temperatures. You can show the political boundaries and so forth. So the interactive one is a great way to kind of play around with the tools on the laptops or on the iPads, and then students can make notes on it. If they're looking to create some type of timeline of events that take place historically, this would be a great way to do it as well, because the students could move their text boxes around. For example, they can draw lines on this in particular and then overlay it with other key events that are taking place. The other example that I have for the map maker itself is actually one that I had used to show Rome's success through its economy. So they had a look at geographical features and how it helped Rome advance. And they took those pieces and then put it into how it helped their economic power as well as their actual military in itself. We then went through and we started talking about climate change and the impact that changes the climate might have within economics itself. So we've kind of done it, chunked it out. We've looked at the Gulf of Maine, for example, versus the Nile River, and looked at climate change from a water scarcity component. You could look at it that way as well, where you'll be doing two geographical comparisons, but there's lots and lots of opportunity. This one in particular focused on the geographical features. So this is a sample of what Nat Geo offered out. You had an article that you could read with it. There are 2 links attached here that would give you background information about what was going on with the physical geography and how it helped or hindered Rome. And then students will be required to fill out this 2-sided graphic organizer. And the reading is fairly layered, so it would enable the lower end readers plus the higher end readers to still be engaged with the reading itself. Once this was completed, we then had gone through and had a discussion about, what actually is geography? How did it help Rome? How did it hinder Rome? How did it create this massive opportunity to create a Roman Empire? This is just an example of the students using the VR headsets. They did examine out some of the ancient ruins of Rome. They had talked about we had talked about the economy, and then they had looked at further examples of what some of those economic commodities might have looked like. This is a sample of either the tabletop version that you can print off and have a couple students work on. What we chose to do instead is we honed in on what kind of the modern Roman Empire would have looked like today. And so you just would print off whatever particular sections that you needed. So if you're just focusing in on this area here, so if you wanted to grab Carthage and so forth, you would be able to. And then we took all of those pieces, and the students knew that they had numbers and they had to fit their numbers in to build a small section of the European map itself. And this map was massive. I actually had 4 classes that helped work on this particular map in itself. So this is one class working on part of the map. They were required to piece it all together or put their portions together, and then the other classes added in their pieces. They had to color their map by different countries, modern countries, so that they could see what was basically the buildup to Europe itself. So no of the similar colors touching each other. And then they went through and they started to add on the commodities. They started to go through and put down Rome's trade routes and the influence that Rome had over the ancient world and how it influenced other countries to basically come in and shifts and boundaries and so forth. And so this is kind of what part of the finished map looked like. It does have some of the sea trade routes listed on here. And then the final piece was for the students to add in additional information about what the both the military routes would have been by land, and then also by any of the additional routes by sea.
So I teach human geography here at Orono High School, and it is an advanced placement class, but it is a wealth of resources if you're looking for information about geography and teaching geography. And you just go over to the College Board AP Central site and download all of that. And I'll add that link to our resources page as well. But to start off with, so what is GIS? So GIS are geospatial information systems, and I have like the little definition there from the dictionary or Esri or wherever I pulled it out. But it is a way to, it's a software program and a series of analysis tools that allow you to take data and spatially analyze it and look at it. And the most common output that we have of a GIS is a map. But GISs are involved in our everyday life. From how bus routes are scheduled to where Starbucks are placed, to analysis of routes of the great blue heron. I just read a fascinating article this fall on how great blue heron have been tagged by the University of Maine system, and they track them down the east coast of the United States. And for that analysis, that spatial analysis of their travels, they use GIS. So it's a great way to sort of use some practical hands-on real life software with your students. And all schools are available to get a site license of Esri. Esri is just the company who produces sort of the industry standard of GIS software. They're, I guess, sort of the Microsoft or the Google of the GIS world. And they have an information on how to get it for your school, and it's free. And so I've included the link here for people to just do some more research on that. If you have kids who are techie and into this, they'll jump right in and really do great things. There are other versions of GIS out there. Pardon me, there are some open source systems as well, but I like this one the best. We've used it for several years. And when I say we use it, we probably use one tenth of the functionality of it. So I've included a video, and I've got some resources on the resource page for you as well. There's a great video series about GIS, which I think would be great in part or full for grades 7 through 12. It's out of the University of Pittsburgh. It's not Pittsburgh, the Pennsylvania State University. It's out of there, and they have a big GIS program. The University of Maine here in Orono, we have a fairly robust geosensing and GIS department that is on the cutting edge of geosensing and sensing data as well. So if we look at the next slide, here are some ways to use GIS in your classroom. And so the simplest way and perhaps the easiest way to engage your students in an output from a GIS is through a story map. And a story map is the joining of sort of maps and graphics and videos with text that just, it pulls it all together. And the samples I'm going to show you are like really, really gorgeous. But they can also be really, really simple. So I've got the links there for the About page and the gallery. And the About page will tell you all about how to do them. It's a free product from Esri again. The gallery is just beautiful ones, from professional ones that Esri has done to simple ones that high schools have done. But I think if we could look at maybe the Downton Abbey one, if we click on the Downton Abbey, Sarah is driving the computer here, so that's why I'm like, click on this. So this just gives you an idea. I'm a big Downton Abbey fan, so I thought we would look at this one. And so this is, you know, a story map on behind the scenes of health and of illness. And so if we scroll through, this is out of the University of Minnesota, it, you know, adds images and text. And as we scroll down, we'll also begin to see, you know, the spatial analysis. We'll see maps and numbers and infographics that sort of make an exciting and fascinating story for our students to engage in and with. This is a great way to, you know, when I was talking about the epidemiological transition model in human geography the other day, you know, we looked at this and sort of like, oh, wow, you know, health and illness, how does that tie into sort of modern medicine and whatnot? You know, here we have even, you know, how they thought babies came into the world. But, you know, this is the whole process. And if your students are familiar with Downton Abbey, another one that I clicked in there for a sample, if we can go back to the slideshow, is the Urban Ant Project out of High Tech High School in California. This is a really cool high school if you're interested in integrating technology into the classroom. They do a lot of cool things, but they looked at biodiversity in San Diego. And so as you scroll down through, they sort of spell out their data. It's a citizen science project. And it's really interesting. This just shows the kids in action. One that I used today in human geography as well about migration. I didn't link it up, but it's about forced migration out of North Africa and some of the challenges that have been there. So these are just fun ways to sort of begin to get your students into looking at data, looking at the spatial analysis of data. This is a great map that sort of shows where things are. And so I think that's it's an easy entry into sort of using and looking at data and maps. And that's more than just a static thing, that maps can be dynamic. And of course, you can look at it on your own, but there's like the maple syrup festivals of Canada. So I thought that was just funny because I like maple syrup. But you can use them either as, you know, reading in class. You can assign them as reading. You can also make them as well. So I don't have any really good examples of ones that my kids have made. They're kind of like, and I think if that's a goal of mine, to have my students do story maps this year towards the end of the year. So stay tuned. I'll tweet some out if I can get them to do them. And the next slide is sort of taking the GIS and using a geo inquiry. The biggest challenge about using GIS in the classroom is it can be daunting. It's a piece of software that can have a steep learning curve. I know, I'm really selling it, aren't I? I'm like, use GIS. And I'm like, it has a steep learning curve. But what Esri has done is they've put together these sort of boxed activities using GIS called geo inquiries. And so if we click on the picture here, it's going to take us to the website that has all of these geo inquiries, and they have them for all sorts of things. They're you know, literature, social studies, environmental science, government, human geography, math, Upper elementary, it's more like 4, 5, 6, US history, world geography, and world history. And what they do is they walk you through a lesson and walk you through how to use the GIS to do some data analysis. Yeah, so if we click on the human geography collection, level 1, they say they're 15-minute activities. You don't need to log into anything to ArcGIS Online, and you can do them standalone. So you can do them on one laptop and project them for the whole class to watch. And depending upon the size of your class, to have sort of everybody involved in it. Or you can share them out individually and have students work on them individually. So we see that they give you all in these documents the questions and the answers and the instructions how to do it. I will say that even though they say it's a quick 15-minute activity, I really find that it takes more like 20 to 30 minutes. See, time required 15 minutes. It really, especially when you start, takes more like, I would say 20 to 30 minutes for students to work through them. As they do more, they get better at them and quicker at them. But I think it's nice to see them sort of struggle, and I think that's an interesting word to use, but to sort of struggle with the technology and struggle with the thinking and the questions and the analysis. It's not a quick, easy answer. It really makes them think and use those higher order thinking skills that we want them to use. One thing that I do, if we can go back to the slides, in the next slide, I think is a sample. Yeah, so this is what I do. I sort of take that geo inquiry page they have and I put it in a Google document, and then I share it out through my Google Classroom. And I've linked this up so you can access this after the lesson as well. And I put it in the Google Classroom, and I let students pair up and work on it together. And I sort of break it down, and all the links are there, the hints are there, and they just work through and fill in the document as they go through. It really only takes me about 5 to 10 minutes to sort of like put it all into a document. It's a lot of copy and paste, but it allows the kids to enter their data into it, and sort of then I can see their thinking and their process as well. The next slide is, oh yeah, just general resources for us to use. And maybe Sarah can talk a little bit about the National Geographic education resources. But I do want to point everybody to the National Council for Geographic Education. They're a great organization that have a ton of resources. They have a ton of webinars as well that they can use and that you can use and access. It's very reasonable to become a member. They have these APHD bell ringers they send out once a week that really, I think, can be used. They're very AP Human Geography specific, but they also can be used in other content areas as well. And they're great also for current events in all classes, just with a geography bent. And that's a membership to be a member. I think it's like $25 or something, or maybe I'm underselling it, but I think it's reasonable. But resources there. And then of course the main council for the Maine Geographic Alliance has a great Facebook page, and Sue Lottie is a great resource out of the University of Maine at Farmington. And they're a great group of people to work with. They offer sometimes some seminars in the summer and professional development. And then Esri, I've linked the things there that I've talked about, but they are a great resource and really just are really wanting to reach out and work with more and more schools. They have books that you can get and they'll send to you. They have the competitions that they do for students, teacher video challenge. They want to reach out to teachers in classrooms and make their software and the study of geography, more dynamic. They really want to move it past like, here is a map, where is France, where is Poland, and really take geography to that sort of very dynamic, exciting place where it is, where you're looking at, cultures and religion and how the physical landscape impacts, what we see today. So they're a great resource, Esri is. Sarah, I don't know if you want to talk about National Geographic a little bit. You're a little more involved with them than I. Although I am certified. I did get National Geographic teacher certified?
So National Geographic offers out this really cool opportunity for teachers K through 12, and the opportunity is to actually become a National Geographic certified teacher. You get this cool title, and it basically means that you get it. You can teach about different spaces. You can teach about different aspects within the environment itself, and you can make connections between the human and the environmental world. Unfortunately, the website is not
Yeah,
working.
well,
I'll try it again. See if it pops up. Oh,
oh,
okay. So the National Geographic certification is free. It basically works you through 3 different opportunities where you will be working through some guided questions, you'll be doing some readings, and then you have to do responses to it. You have a huge network of other teachers and researchers available to you, and it provides out a really unique opportunity to be able to connect to the National Geographic world in itself. It also gives you opportunities to participate potentially in their seminars and also their fellowship opportunities that they offer out to teachers. So there's a lot of opportunities within the National Geographic certification itself. And then Nat Geo has lots and lots of different resources throughout their files themselves. That includes the map maker, the interactives, there's articles, there's all kinds of video clips, but it's very much drawn into making connections between the human world and also the environment itself.
I think I tried to update the second link, so that might work. And there are just tons of great resources out there as well. The National Council for Social Studies has a lot of resources for geography. And I think the thing is just to get started, just to dip your toe in the water and start, incorporating geography into your classrooms bit by bit. And I think students really are craving that sort of like spatial analysis, hands-on, doing more with maps than just finding places on them, realizing how the physical world influences our built world, and from there.
Yeah, and that inquiry piece is huge in
Mm,
trying to get students up and moving in the classroom itself. And you're absolutely right in trying to make those connections. The more connections we can make into their current lives and so forth, the students obviously will make it more relevant. They'll find it more relevant. So,
absolutely. So please do click on the link on the side here, or we said for this presentation and live links. Um, I'll add a few more links that we've talked about here and didn't think about before to put in. Um, I guess we can take questions.